I'd like to invite Mr. Gopal Srinivasan up to the stage, please.
Welcome to this last day plenary session of Indiaspora's event. We had a very nice morning, 2 sub-sessions, and which went with a lot of energy, and one of it was about investing with a cause across the world. And who better to then introduce after that than Amit Chandra. Amit is a very dear friend. I'm not exactly sure how to describe him. I never realized I would have to actually introduce him at some point in time, because he's the kind of person who introduces you to the world, much more than him being introduced. He's of course the head of Bain Capital, which is one of the most premier private equity organizations, but that probably defines about 5% of Amit. He is a philanthropist. He truly believes in spending his time, his network, and his enormous intellectual talent in doing good. Many people, when they do philanthropy, it's always curious to see what motivates them. And different things motivate us at different points in our own lives, leave alone from different people. But with Amit, it has always been clear about one thing. I want to build a better society. Whether it's enormous work that he does for water, which is his most favorite subject, or whether it was his activity during the COVID time, bringing his sense of discipline and data to analyze what works, what didn't work, what was the different infection level in which particular part of Bombay, or whether his work in making sure that company groups like Tata's actually during the moments of difficulty had a very sage counsel and advice on their board. He has always been involved in that one simple idea that our great nation must be served by making every Indian get an opportunity in whatever way they can. So Amit, it's wonderful that you're going to be the keynote speaker. I'm just so delighted that I have such a dear and affectionate friend like you to introduce. Amit Chandra, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for that affectionate introduction, Gopal. I'm just very glad for that introduction, but I'm also very glad I'm speaking before Neera and not after her. You'll soon find out why. So I'll just make a few points this morning, and I'd be very happy to actually make this more interactive and maybe take a few questions and have a dialogue with all of you. Welcome to this forum. This is, for those of us who've been involved in the social sector journey in the country for a reasonable period of time, this is actually, oh, that's great, I can walk around. This is actually probably the most exciting time in many decades to be engaged with India's social sector journey. We've always had a rich tradition for philanthropy in the country. Going back, icons, people who have inspired me like Jamshedji Tata, Dorabji Tata have done incredible things way before philanthropy even became popular the way we see it in the West today. They bequeathed all their wealth for the good of society, all their wealth virtually. And we saw out of that the birth of incredible institutions which have actually contributed to building India and which have touched many of our lives. And then around the turn of independence, we saw ordinary Indians, give back in many ways to the independence movement, and slightly, more wealthy ones, give back to make sure there wasn't inequity in the country. The Bhudan movement that Acharya Vinoba Bhave led, where he walked across the length and breadth of the country, got farmers who were wealthier than their sisters and brothers to give large tracts of land so that landless farmers actually had a future. So we've actually had a rich tradition of philanthropy in the country, but somehow after that, things changed. What changed, one can always debate. That's for social scientists to opine on. But I feel that where we all have an opportunity, and we're incredibly blessed, is that I believe we are in the golden age of Indian philanthropy once again. Number of things are contributing towards this, but it's important to step back and think about that for a long period of time after this, this incredible culture that existed, it was actually the foreigners who stepped in and said, look, India is a basket case. There's an opportunity to make incredible philanthropic contributions here. And so they stepped in and said, let's do good in Indian society. This is the place where we can get the highest social ROI. So we saw a lot of foreign foundations step in and try to do good here. But in the last 20 years, there's been huge amount of wealth creation in India, both by Indian entrepreneurs and importantly by the Indian diaspora offshore. And so the case has got built for Indians to give back to build the India that all of us wish to see. And that's what in my mind creates an opportunity, because we have a very bipolar India at this point of time. There's a 10% that virtually can live the life that 10% anywhere in the world can live. And then there's, 30, 40% which still present a huge opportunity because they are denied in opportunity. And if we all invest in building a future for them, we can actually build the India of our dreams. So this is, in my mind, the golden era of Indian philanthropy. We've seen in the last 4 or 5 years in itself some evidences of how that opportunity manifests itself. There was a CSR bill that came in. Many people went kicking and screaming to it. But in a short period of time, we've seen that number just balloon to about 20,000 crores. At today's exchange rates, that's about $2.5 billion. That's growing at about 15%. It's not just money which is going in from Indian corporates to philanthropy, but importantly, it is bringing Indian companies closer to grassroots problems that exist in India. Initially, it used to be a few companies like the Tatas, but the Bajajes, etc., who actually understood problems in and around their factories in a little bit deeper way. But now everyone's getting, these are becoming boardroom conversations. So that's really interesting because it's pulling in employees, senior, junior, middle level, into social discourse. And I think that's really incredible. It's wonderful. And then the second, thing that we are seeing is that we've had this extraordinary wealth creation which started in the 90s and is only gathering more momentum which is a new generation of wealth creators who think very differently of wealth. And they believe that this society has nurtured them and it's their responsibility in many cases to give back that wealth to build back society. And so we've seen many of the IT entrepreneurs do really amazing things, try to build institutions, try to build movements, and this is only gathering momentum. And the third thing is, while some of these IT entrepreneurs and others are very wealthy, we are beginning to see actually professional donors emerge who may not have that amount of wealth, but are in the next tier. And they're getting together in a collaborative manner and trying to build institutions. A good example of that is, Ashoka University that I'm a part of. We started with 7 or 8 of us who, contributed the initial corpus, and now there are over 150 who've contributed 1,500 crores to build the largest collaborative philanthropic endeavor in India. And there are many such examples. There's Plaksha University and there's Kriya University. There are many hospitals that are coming up. And so this is the golden era of Indian philanthropy in my mind, where, relatively new entrepreneurs can come in and build institutions and build movements, do it collaboratively with others. And it's no longer just the preserve of the inheritors and the traditional, family wealth creators to simply do philanthropy. So this is truly one very interesting aspect of these times. The other interesting aspect of these times is how people are giving back. It's no longer check writing. Gopal talked about how we as a family give. My wife gives 100% of our time. I give about 50% of my time. The reason we give it is because actually we learn a lot from it. It satisfies us incredibly, makes us feel whole. We're now seeing a lot more people feel that way. There is an amazing opportunity for us to engage with issues, whichever issues we are passionate about. There's an opportunity to travel the length and breadth of this country, work with social entrepreneurs, learn from them, meet communities, understand issues, and sometimes we have something to contribute, and sometimes, most of the times, we have just something to learn. But when you actually get involved in trying to solve problems, undoubtedly, you feel satisfied. You feel that you've, grown as an individual. You feel that, your life has had some purpose. And we are beginning to see a lot more people do so. And so I think this is a big change, a big, that we have noticed. It's no longer simply about sitting and writing checks out of room. There's nothing wrong in doing that. That's certainly very important. But we are beginning to see the emergence of the engaged donor. And the third dimension is this emphasis on accountability and results. It's no longer what I call fondly the Hundi approach. A lot of Indian philanthropy, if you look at the data, was directed towards the Hundi approach, where we essentially try to bribe our way to nirvana by putting money into a Hundi, be it in a temple, mosque or church or gurdwara, and hope that good will come out of it. Certainly some good comes out of that via the trickle-down effect. But I think now, via philanthropy, we are trying to actually drive change in a much more meaningful way. The dialogues are basically very focused on how is this going to solve the problem. People are getting increasingly focused on making sure that the organizations that people are working with are no longer just on the treadmill of social good, which in my mind is actually a terrible treadmill to be on. We have to basically think about exiting, situations that we are in. If we work in water, how do we basically make sure we move out of a village when we enter one? If we get engaged with a school, how do we make sure that that engagement, gets transferred to the person who was originally responsible to that school? I think that kind of thinking is a very fresh way of thinking which is now coming in. Empower people, make sure communities learn to fish and that you're not giving them fish forever. And this, in my mind, is also very, very interesting and is a part of why this, I believe, will be the golden age of philanthropy, because otherwise we'll just be, endlessly spending money and thinking that we are doing good, but it'll never end. And finally, and I'll end with my comments with that, I think the other really exciting dimension of everything that's happening, I touched upon it earlier, is collaboratives. Collaboratives are really interesting because I think we live in a society where people are talking past each other. My device, I'm not on any social media, but I do read the news a lot. So on my news feeds, I have, of course, everything in India, but in the US, I follow CNN and Fox News. You often think that they're from two different countries. And you realize that people everywhere, it's not just about India, but also about West, often just talk past each other. And I think when you try to do good, and you try to collaborate with people who believe ultimately that, they're trying to solve the same problem, it brings everybody together. It brings the best of everybody together. It's a great opportunity to, bind all of us. And I think that's what many of us, where we've got together and tried to build institutions, pretty much all the work that we do is in a collaborative. Some of these collaboratives are, collaboratives just between people in India. Some of them include collaboratives with overseas foundations, but everything we did, Gopal talked about COVID, our COVID work was actually collaboratives in cross-border as well as in India, but everything we do is a collaborative, and a collaborative for a reason where people bring in the best of what they have to offer. And that is really exciting and enriching, and you learn a lot from that. The other important dimension of what is happening is collaboratives with government. Even if philanthropy miraculously increased 100x over the next 3 years, and I do believe it will increase dramatically, but even if it increased 100x over the next 3 years, we will not be able to solve the problems that we aspire to solve. The only way these will get solved is if we work collaboratively with the government, which is at the end of the day the dominant spender in the social arena. And so our main role as philanthropists is to actually collaborate with the government and make sure their quality of spending improves, to make sure that they are at the end of the day, we are innovating, we are taking risks that they can't take, and we are actually helping them build better mousetraps. In areas where they have tried things for many years, they have tried to build get better educational outcomes for decades, and things haven't moved. How can we basically, help do that at scale pilots and then embed that in government schools? Same with health, same with water, same with pollution. So I think our role as philanthropists is now actually emerging and is getting redefined. I think that is a very exciting thing that is happening at this point of time. I would finally like to end with just a plea. All of us push ourselves incredibly hard when it comes to targets we set in most aspects of life. We have great personal goals. I had a strong personal goal when I came back to India on when I wanted to run my first company and when I would create my first $1 million. Actually, when I wanted to be a crorepati, but it soon changed. I think it's very important for us to have philanthropic goals and have social goals as well. When is it that we'll solve the first problem in our village, in our state? When is it that we'll give away 50% of our wealth during our lifetime and not at the end of it? I think if we really want to see the society that we want to see, we must have, philanthropic and social goals. This is, I think, very, very important. There are networks being set up to basically help us achieve that. Just like we build capacity for everything in our lives, in our business area, in our investing area, I think if we put our minds to it, we can do it in the social area and we can go really very far. Thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you. I don't know, do we have time for any questions or?
Sure, a couple of questions now.
Yeah, I think we have 3 minutes left. Yeah.
Hi, Amit. Great to see you. This is Devottam. Wonderful. If you would, it'll be great if you share with us a little bit about the time. The change takes time, and I've been talking to so many people, and they always say that in the world of philanthropy, in the world of social impact sector, slow is actually a good thing. And if you could share a little bit about that, because coming from you, that'll be hugely helpful for a lot of us here, who have been very successful in their career and they now spend so much of time and they give both resources and time. But I think that aspect will be greatly appreciated. So thank you again, and great to see you.
I think that's a very good question. I think, I've been involved in building 2 organizations in the corporate world and sat on the boards of many, and I've done the same in the social sector. And I would say without doubt, my observation is that social sector problems are far more difficult to solve than corporate problems, far more difficult to solve. And therefore, I think that does require a degree of recognition, going back to your question, that change will come faster. But at the same time, I think it's important to be impatient about change. Just because it's going to take longer doesn't mean we don't put resources at it. In fact, one of my learnings has been that because it's more complex and we know it's going to take longer doesn't mean we accept that and do nothing about it. In fact, often you need to resource it to deal with that fact that is going to take longer. It means that because you can't solve it yourself, you need to collaborate and bring critical mass to be able to solve that problem in a way in which it will get solved. So your impatience needs to get creative. And you need to design yourself, your solutioning in such a way that you keep learning and changing your approach over the years, because the initial few years are often a deep learning phase. Water, for example, that Gopal talked about. We started working in water in 2013, and it's only now that we've actually got critical mass in water. This year we worked in 1,200 villages, and hopefully next year we'll work in 5,000. But to get to that point has taken a long period of time and a lot of learning and unlearning. So you've got to be cognizant that it'll take time, but you've got to be impatient and you've got to resource it properly and think about that. So I think, often people will say, oh, this thing it's very difficult, it's going to take a long time, and just get accepting of that. I think it's important to not get accepting of it. Great, no other questions? Thank you so much.